What is going on, YouTube? This is Jim back with another video, here to give you guys my final thoughts on Far Cry New Dawn. This is a direct sequel to Far Cry 5, a game that I really did enjoy. New Dawn takes a very interesting spin on it. I think Ubisoft definitely took some risks with this game. Some of them panned out, some of them not as much. I'm going to be getting into some spoilers, but I'm not going to do that until later on. So if you haven't played either Far Cry 5 or Far Cry New Dawn, stay a while and listen. I'll tell you when you need to bounce. But for now, let's talk about how amazing this game is. It takes place 17 years after the events of Far Cry 5. And while it does use the same map, although honestly I never noticed, the world has been largely transformed. There are definitely a lot more buildings that are destroyed. There are new places to loot. New camps have popped up around the place for you to go and explore. And it has a really good loop. The focal point of this entire adventure is this town that becomes your headquarters, known as Prosperity. And Prosperity is a town that is definitely on the ropes. They've been invaded by this new evil gang led by these two ruthless women, Mickey and Lou. And they need your help in order to fight back these two villains and to return to their namesake of Prosperity. Now, the really cool mechanic in this game, in the loop, the hook that's going to keep you playing more and more and more, is definitely in building up the base. To build up the base, there's a couple things you need to do. First, you need to go out and rescue all of the specialists that have been scattered throughout the world. A really cool thing is a couple of those specialists are actually characters from Far Cry 5. So you're going to get to see what happened to some of those characters after the events of the game. Some of them turned out better than others, and they all are going to provide you with some sort of unique skill that is brought back to your base as kind of a specialization workstation. Whether it's crafting medicine from plants, or crafting better weapons, or crafting better vehicles. All of these specialists are going to help you do that. Then you go and start leveling up these various workstations by going to these enemy camps and stealing ethanol. You're also going to get a lot of raw materials by scavenging around the land. That is going to come back, which will allow you to unlock new things, which will allow you to upgrade your workstation, which you will use to build and everything. And basically you get this loop of building up not only the main town of Prosperity, but building up all these individual workstations along the way as well. And it's fun because you're going to explore a lot, and you're going to be rewarded for it by finding all of these raw materials. Some of them are locked behind safe doors. Some of them are kind of guarded in more harder areas, like behind like a boss type character. I don't want to say boss to make you think that it's this epic boss fight. It's not. They're just level 3 characters, which are the most elite characters. Some of them are going to be found via treasure maps. So you're going to get a map of a general picture of an area, and it's up to you to go kind of figure out where that is and unlock and get the treasure from there too. So it's a really cool idea that kind of constantly feeds upon itself. They've also done some other cool things with this game. It still looks beautiful. It's definitely very vibrant and very stylized. There's a lot of neon spray paints, a lot of bright blues, a lot of bright pinks, and I think it works. The graphics are phenomenal. They're definitely utilizing a significant portion of Far Cry 5's graphics. I played both of these games on PC. Both of them looked insanely beautiful. They both have ultra-wide support, but if you're playing on console, they look pretty good there too. Now, on top of the really cool graphics, they have added a new damage system. Now, this isn't nearly as advanced as something you would see in one of the new Assassin's Creed games, like Odyssey, where you're actually looking at certain stats and saying, well, what's my damage per second? What's my weapon modifier? Think of that, but significantly lower down. As a matter of fact, lower down to just 3 levels, level 1, level 2, and level 3. However, each of these weapons, as you level them up, will get stronger, and they will do more damage, and it will allow you to defeat other enemies a lot easier. You're going to do all that with all of these materials that you've been crafting. So it has a really good hook there of you exploring. On top of the really good graphics and the really good weapon system, they've also added a health bar on enemies with damage indicators. Now, this is a series first. They've never done this in a Far Cry game. And I know a lot of people criticize Ubisoft and say, hey, Ubisoft, you've kind of taken all of your games and morphed them into one. A lot of your games have this kind of open world narrative with a leveling system and a loot system and some enemies that are a little too hard and you have to come back later. You can defeat any enemy in this game with any gun. But keep in mind, it's going to get a lot harder later on, and that's something I definitely regret, not spending a little more time getting into those level 3 guns when I tackled the last few missions of the game, because no joke, the final boss fight took me over 30 minutes, but I was using a definitely significantly underpowered gun. Now, I like the damage indicators. I think they're cool. When you hit an enemy and you see a big crit number and you see them drop instantly, you know that you are doing the right thing. It'll kind of also give you an indication as well on some of the mutated animals which are roaming across the countryside as to if you're actually hitting them in the proper spot. Some of them have weak spots, so you'll be shooting an enemy for 2 or 3 damage, and then they'll turn, you'll see this big, bright, glowing spot, and you'll shoot them for 100 or 200 damage. And it's big and bright and vibrant. It's like, oh, okay, I'm doing the right thing. I like that. I hope that that continues into other games. I feel like some of these games do have this bullet sponge mechanic, which I'm not a big fan of. So the fact that they're rolling in damage numbers into Far Cry, I think is a very welcome change. Now, before I get into spoilers, I want to talk loosely about the story. It's nonsensical. It's supernatural. And while it does try to paint a very dark and bleak narrative early on in the game, it very quickly ramps off into the absolute asinine, ridiculous nonsense that you would expect from pretty much any other Far Cry game. I thought that this would be a great opportunity in Far Cry to kind of push the envelope in the narrative, but it seems like they didn't necessarily want to do that. They definitely wanted to play it more safe. Now, in terms of overall story arc and understanding kind of how this fits into the greater Far Cry universe, that's where I got to get into spoilers. So if you haven't played either of these games, I'm going to leave you with a recommendation of I highly, highly recommend these. If you have not played these games, leave, because I'm going to get into spoilers now. All right, for everybody that's still here, what the hell was with that ending? Now, I love that Far Cry 5 had Joseph Seed win. He actually won. He dropped nukes, he destroyed everything, and he was going to rebuild the world in his own image. He was going to fulfill his prophecy that he thought with God, and the project of Eden's Gate would be complete. Now, when we find Joseph Seed about 3/4 of the way through this game, he is a largely broken man. And it was absolutely fascinating to see kind of his fall. Him realizing that everything he thought he was doing really wasn't for much of anything. And a lot of the challenges that he faced after the apocalypse broke him. And he basically went into exile. And he left his son behind to kind of pick up the pieces. I thought he definitely overshadowed Mickey and Lou. I thought Mickey and Lou were incredibly underwhelming characters. Yes, they were extremely villainous. They did some ridiculously evil acts. They execute your leader right in front of you, which I thought was very, very interesting. It was something I wasn't expecting. They perform a lot of just bad things throughout this game. However, the frustrating thing about all this is that while I love the fact that you're building up prosperity and you're building up this town and armoring yourself up and getting ready for this big fight, ultimately the way in which you confront them is just kind of an act of serendipity where some random fight manager happens to know them and he can kind of sneak you in to allow you to have the final fight. I think it would have been a lot better if you strategically started taking territory back from Mickey and Lou, kind of pinning them into a corner. Instead of some random character saying, hey, look, here I am. Oh, okay. Here's how to get to the final boss. Good luck, have fun, bye. And then they just vanish and you never see them again. That's why I said that you got to keep in mind with this story, it ultimately is nonsensical. Now, Mickey and Lou and that particular boss fight was really, really good. And given the choice of killing Mickey after Lou has died was one of the easiest decisions I made. I was spamming left mouse button, waiting for the opportunity to execute her, and I did with glee. Now, does that mean that I'm a homicidal maniac? Of course not. But the reality is a character like that is beyond redemption and had to go. And it was really, really fun to see them finally fall. But then to continue on to see that we had yet a greater evil, that Joseph Seed's son, Ethan, had actually gone crazy, and he wanted to not only take out his father, but kind of continue in this really weird, diabolical plan. And it was cool to see them kind of argue, and for a brief moment, side with Joseph against the son. Now, this whole thing with the supernatural tree and eating this thing and getting this Eden power that allows you to double jump and punch people and run really fast was absolutely fun to play with. And it was the primary mechanic I use on particularly tough bosses. Definitely used it on Mickey and Lou exclusively. And a little bit with Ethan at the very end when he turns into this giant weird shadow monster thing. But ultimately, it didn't really have a place in the story. And that's where I say it could have been grounded more in reality, and I would have been okay with that. But they decided to take this weird, bizarre route. Hey, it unlocks new perks, new things to go off and collect. It definitely changes the gameplay significantly. Ultimately, you take out Ethan because he is a bad guy and he is really insane. His father is insane and he was surrounded by this weird cult of people that were insane, so of course he's insane. It devastates Joseph, and you have the choice, again, the second time in this game, to kill off a character or to let them suffer. And I took out Joseph Seed. I thought it was the right choice to make. Although part of me wanted him to stay alive to suffer, he was so diabolical in the first game, and he really just was such a menace to the world. The things that he did were also, like Mickey and Lou in my opinion, beyond redemption. So you had an option there of kind of stopping things or continuing the cycle going on again. I like that player choice. Probably the coolest part about this game, outside of the sniping grandmother, which was actually a really interesting NPC, was the judge. And come to find out that this game, absolutely littered with lore and with all of these little recordings and books that you read, little sheets of paper that kind of fill in the gaps. And we can follow along in the story and fill in a lot of things. You can see Joseph Seed's mother, or I'm sorry, I guess one of his wives, because he clearly had a lot of wives going in the last game, and quite the ladies' man he was. You could see that, the woman that had his kid was nervous about introducing the kid. She tried to get away. You can read about what happened to the rookie and how the rookie was actually alive and locked in the bunker with Joseph Seed for 17 years, slowly being mentally corrupted and manipulated, ultimately snapping mentally and turning into the judge. And I love that he was an NPC in this game, and you can see him, and you could see him basically wearing his shame. He's wearing this giant helmet. Although I don't think he necessarily did anything wrong. He was sent there as a deputy to take out Joseph Seed's cult, and he did the best that he could. Unfortunately, he didn't succeed. However, it was interesting because, he saw his friends get broken, and he kind of was, broken down by Joseph Seed, and he became this really cool NPC. I love that the game has a very nice circular element to it. And I love that characters that were developed in the first game carry on to the second game. You can see how their characters, how their personalities have changed after Joseph Seed blows everything up. And it was really cool to see your character, who was your playable character in the last game, kind of become this mindless slave. And you're playing as somebody else, observing it. And it was a really nice touch. So I think they did a really good job with this game, and I don't think it gets enough credit that it deserves. I think really tying up Far Cry 5 in a very meaningful way was cool. I still maintain that the supernatural thing was a little bizarre, maybe didn't necessarily need to be in there, but it is a Far Cry game. We are prone to fighting ravenous weasels who have basically infinite health, the nonsensical ramblings of Herc, and a sniping grandma, just to name a few of the crazy people you're going to come across. But I really did love this game, and it's definitely convinced me that if and when Far Cry 6 is announced next month, it will definitely be a day one order for me. I hope you guys found this video informative. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.